Welcome to the EmpowerU podcast. Our goal is to empower you to change the world. For more content like this, go online to empoweru.live. That's empoweru.live.
Hey everyone, I'm Steve Holt, and this is the EmpowerU podcast, and I'm joined today with Joey Follett, who is our youth pastor at The Road Church here in Colorado Springs. And Joey is one of our young guys who has come in and done a fabulous job with our youth group. I think you've done a fantastic job, man.
Thank you.
Even with very little experience in that particular arena of church work, yet a lot of experience working with young people in high school and stuff.
Right.
I'm really curious about what is your story as far as, first of all, coming to know Christ, the family you grew up in. Tell us a little bit about the journey you've been on, Joey.
Sure. Well, I grew up here in the Springs in a Christian home, went to a Baptist church in the Springs, and grew up knowing the Lord, Christian school too, really blessed with the biblical upbringing that I had, both at church, which was a real intense, you could say, Bible-believing, teaching church, and then same thing at school even. And so I knew throughout my upbringing, knew the Lord, walked with the Lord, and also knew that I loved being around kids. And even in high school, I volunteered at summer camps and was like a middle school counselor at a Christian summer camp and things like that. And so knew in high school that I knew I wanted to do something with kids, so I thought, I guess I'll be a teacher. And history was the only subject I did okay in at school. It was the only one I liked. So I said, I guess I'll be a history teacher. In hindsight, I should have done PE, but history was fun. So I became a history teacher. Went to school for that, joined the military as well, so I got to do that part-time for a while, and then went to school to be a history teacher, and I started doing that here in the Springs, taught 8th grade history for a while.
How long did you do that?
I did it for 4 years, and I got to coach a bunch of sports, mainly wrestling, but got to coach a lot of stuff while I was teaching as well.
So were you doing wrestling in high school?
Yeah, I wrestled elementary, middle school, and high school, and then started coaching while I was in college.
And you're coaching now, aren't you?
Yeah, I still get to do that. Yeah, which is really fun.
And you're doing it at a local high school?
Local middle school, yeah.
Middle school. Mm-hmm. And how's that been for you?
That's great. I took a few years off, and I got back into that last year. And that's a lot of fun. Just kind of a different way to interact with students and make a difference. And I love wrestling, so it's great.
And then how did you meet Allie?
We met in high school. So I was a senior. She was a sophomore, and we had known each other as a small Christian school. I had played soccer with her brother. So we knew each other well, but we're friends. And then I asked her to homecoming my senior year, and we've been together ever since. That was
my goodness. And
12 years ago.
How many kids?
We got 3 kids, 3 boys.
Well, I tell you, when I see Miles and the whole crew come in, I just feel for you guys because I remember those days.
Yeah.
I love being a dad, and Liz loved being a mom. How has kids made a difference in your life?
Oh, man. It made a huge difference in our life. I think we were married for, about 2 years before our oldest Miles was born. And that transition was tough, really. I think we both always knew we wanted to have kids. We both loved kids. And so we were like, yeah, of course we'll have kids. And I don't think we really understood what that transition's like until it happens to you, you know?
Right.
And so I think it kind of took us both off guard for about a year. And then we kind of figured out, wow, this is a big change, and it was hard. And once we kind of acknowledged that, then we've had 2 more since. So it's been good.
So have you found that sometimes it's easier to be with other people's kids than even to be with your own?
Yeah, both. I think, yes, because other people's kids, you can give them back, you know, and that's kind of fun. But yeah, and I just really have a heart for older kids, you know, for teenagers especially, and I always have. And so, I love that I get to be around my little kids at home. Our oldest is 6, and so get to do that. And then also in my other time, I get to hang out with teenagers and pour into them. So get to do a little bit of both. So
going from like a high school teacher and then being in, it would be the National Guard, right?
Yeah,
the Air Force National Guard or Air National Guard?
Yes.
Air Guard. To now being a pastor.
Yeah.
Tell me about how God spoke to you
Yeah.
and led you in that direction.
Yeah, that's it's something that was never on my radar. Like I said, I grew up in church and was around pastors and had youth pastor and youth leaders that had a big impact on my life, but it was never something I thought I would do, was be a pastor. And not that I didn't want to necessarily, it's just, I don't know, it never occurred to me that was an option for me. And so I was teaching, and during my 4th year of teaching, there are a few things that happened. COVID had a big impact on public schools around here, and we took a pay cut, and I wasn't able to coach anymore, which was important to me. And they allowed high school to have sports, but not middle school that year. So I was coaching 4 sports, making some good extra money, and they pulled the plug on that, so I didn't get to do that anymore. And so I was starting for the first time. I mean, I thought I was going to be an 8th grade history teacher for 30 years. Like that, at the school I was at, I was like, I'm good. This is what I'm going to do. Didn't really consider anything else until that moment when there was all these other things happening. I was like, man, maybe I should. Like, what else could I do? And so I was working in the Air Force part-time, and there was an opportunity to do the same job I did in the Air Force, but as a civilian. So I was trained for it. It was a pretty good, well-paying government job up in Denver. And so I jumped on that. It took a while. Government moves a little slow. So it took a while for that to happen, but I did that. So I left teaching February of my 4th year, kind of in the middle of the school year, which wasn't my intent, but that's how it ended up. And so I left, and I didn't know how hard that would be. It took me off guard. My last day, I left, and I remember I didn't call Allie on the way home. I usually do. I didn't call her on the way home because I knew I would start crying, because it was really emotional for me, and I didn't even know why. And I think it hit me later. I was hanging out with a friend of my brother's. I don't even see him very often, and we were talking about it, and he told me, if your identity isn't anything other than Christ, and that thing goes away, it'll feel like a part of you died. And I was like, that's what my identity was wrapped up in, being a public school teacher. As weird as that might sound, like that's who I was. I liked it. I felt like I was good at it, and I was happy doing that for a while. And so when that was gone, and it was my own choice, but still, when that was gone, it was really, really hard, because now I was doing a job where I wasn't around kids, which is what I'm passionate about. I wasn't teaching, which is where I think I'm gifted in. And so I wasn't doing that anymore. It was a government job that I enjoyed, and it wasn't bad, but it wasn't where my gifts and passions were. And so I was sitting there thinking, like, man, I just walked away from my dream job, like what I wanted to do. And I was like, why did I do that? And I knew why I did it. I mean, I really felt the Lord leading me in this direction. I had peace about it big time. And also I was doing it to support my family. And so I had good reasoning behind it, but it was still really hard. And so it took me a few months, but once I kind of accepted that idea of and I also had another friend tell me, just because your gifting is in teaching doesn't mean you have to be an 8th grade history teacher. There's other ways you can use it. And so I didn't know where it was leading at the time, but I was like, yeah, that's true. And so I started working up there, and it was going pretty well at first, but I was missing kids. So we were attending the church, but weren't super plugged in yet. And so I was like, I should serve with the youth group. So I talked to Pastor Ryan, who was leading the youth group at the time, about serving with Tribe. And so I started doing that as a volunteer for about a year. And that was a lot of fun, and got plugged in doing that. And then after a year of doing this government job, our second son was born, and the commute was getting really hard, and long shifts, and had to do night shifts, which was hard with young kids. And so we were praying about it a lot. I was applying for all sorts of jobs, and getting nothing. And Allie and I both it was a worship night here at the church, and we were praying through it and singing the song Tremble. And there's a line that says, you silence fear. And so I felt like the Lord was leading me to quit that job, but I didn't have anything lined up. And so I said, Lord, if I'm supposed to do that, you got to silence my fear, because I've got a family to support, and I don't know what's next. And I did. I had an overwhelming sense of peace, and so did Allie, and we had some friends pray over us for that. And so I still dragged my feet for about a month, but then I finally did quit, and 3 days later found out about the opportunity here. And so it was just so obvious to me that the Lord was lining that up, and I never would have guessed it or seen it coming. But it's great, and now I'm still teaching, but I get to teach the Bible, and I'm still around kids, and I can have an even greater and deeper relationship with them than I could in a classroom. So yeah, it's been really cool.
Well, I really feel like that, Joey, you're probably a natural. If I was to say spiritual gift test, I bet you'd come out really high on the teaching area and leadership. And I just see that teaching area so strong in you. You've really gravitated toward being the best Bible teacher that you can be. Don't you feel that way? Feel like that's something that you really enjoy a lot?
And and that's probably because like that's what I was trained to do, is be a teacher, you know.
Right.
So I was used to teaching history, and so with this transition, I think I just kind of had the same mindset with how I would prepare a lesson for my students, and just did that same kind of model with preparing a message from the Bible for students, you know, in a youth group. So
what's been the most challenging with going from public school teaching to a youth group in a local church?
What's been the most challenging?
The most challenging difference of the two.
Yeah, I think it's a different setting for sure. You know, at a public school, you can send a kid to the principal's office if you need to. You know,
We don't have a principal.
It's a little different
Don't
here.
send them to me.
Right, exactly, right.
Please.
So, but not that we have a lot of issues in that regard. But I think it's just a different atmosphere, and you want it to be a different atmosphere. I don't want youth group to feel like school. You know,
Right.
and so, but you at the same time you do have standards that you expect your leaders to be held to and your students to be held to, as far as like how we dress and behave and act. And so that's kind of something that sometimes is difficult to challenge, because or it can be challenging, because I don't want a kid to feel like there's a lot of rules here and I'm in school, but I want them to feel welcomed and accepted, but also, you know, we are called to behave a certain way. And so I think the best way that's done, though, is through relationship. And if we do a good job, if my leaders do a good job of having relationships with kids, then those conversations are a lot easier to have.
What's been the most rewarding?
Teaching the Bible. You know, I never really got to do that. I had a few opportunities before, but not like I do now, which is usually most weeks I'm teaching twice a week, you know, with middle school and Sunday and high school and Wednesday. And so getting to do it that often is it's so fun. Like, it's one thing studying the Bible for yourself and what you can get out of it, but when you study it through the lens of like, what can I teach other people, I've just found that so much more just hops off the page, and that part's been really, really fun and exciting, and just to get kids excited about it and to make it relatable. And that was my favorite thing to do as a history teacher, and that's why I love teaching American history, because I was like, I want, if a kid is going to be sitting in my 8th grade kid's going to be sitting in my classroom for an hour having to learn about history, I want it to matter to them. Like, I want it to be relatable. I want them to think like this actually applies to my life. You know, the age-old question of why am I learning this? You know, I want to have an answer to that question. And so I always strive to do that every day when I was teaching. And now I get to do that with the Bible, and it's so much more impactful and important because it's life-changing. You know, it's great to know things about our country's past and our history, and it matters. But for a kid to know and understand the Bible, like I found that to be so rewarding.
Do you like one-on-one time with kids?
100%. And I didn't get to really do that as a teacher.
I was going to say, it seems like in the school system, because of the pressure you're under, all the tests you have to grade, all the extracurricular stuff that kind of goes with the flow of being a local church. I mean, a local school teacher, you're not going to get one-on-one time, right?
And that's why I liked coaching, because I could do that a little bit more. It's not as formal of a setting as a classroom is, and there's not the pressure of behavior and grades. And in a wrestling room, or I coach cross country, stuff like that, you can have a more personal relationship and interaction with students. And so that's why I love to coach. But yeah, in a classroom, it's hard. And I would, I was that teacher that always had like kids hanging out in their classroom during lunch and stuff. And so, in those situations, I could a little bit, but not like I can now, you know, getting to meet up with a student for lunch or things like that. Yeah, that's my favorite thing to do. That's awesome.
Well, I see you and Allie sometimes up there praying for people.
Yeah.
You know, at the end of a service. So obviously you're available, you make yourself available to others. What has been the most maybe surprising aspect, not for youth as much as just being a pastor for you, that you maybe didn't expect?
There's been a few things. I think one thing that comes to mind is I'll have like parents of teenagers asking me for advice on how to deal with their teenagers, which is funny to me because like my oldest kid is 6. I was like, I've never raised a teenager. You know, I'm around them a lot, but I have a much different relationship with them than a parent would. And so the first time that happened, it took me a minute to even realize that that's what was happening. I was like, oh, they want my advice, you know? And so that's been kind of cool. But getting to partner with parents and help them, you know, navigate difficult situations with teenagers. Because from my position, I've gotten to see a lot of difficult situations with teenagers. And so I love being able to do that. They'll partner with parents and help them navigate that stuff. But first time that happened kind of surprised me.
Well, you've got a seminar coming up. You got a seminar about electronics and social media. Why are you doing that?
I mean, when we look at, you know, one question I get a lot is like, what do you see as being like the biggest problem with this generation of young people, or the biggest difficulty, or their biggest struggle? And the quick answer for that for me is always anxiety. Like, I think that's the biggest thing that I talk to. And you have students that are involved in all sorts of different things, different gifts and talents and passions and activities, but that's the like common thread that I would say the majority of our students are struggling with is anxiety. And I think there's a lot of factors you could point to, but I think one of them really is technology and phones and social media and the increase in that. And so I think a lot of parents who didn't grow up with smartphones in their pocket aren't exactly sure how to help their kids navigate that same thing. And so, we're partnering with a local organization, nonprofit here, who's going to come and teach a seminar to parents and to students separately about how to navigate that. What's the best use of technology, and not to say like it's bad and we should never use it, because like that's I've noticed with this generation is like they're really good at researching and finding things out, and because they have access to it, you know. And so like there are good things, but how do we navigate the good and the bad and be safe and online and what's the best way parents can support their kids in that and vice versa. So I'm really excited about that's coming up in a week and a half.
I just think that's fantastic, and it just seems to really hit a felt need. So what's been the most rewarding part of being a pastor?
I think just doing work, the work itself is rewarding, you know, like the job itself is rewarding. And there are plenty of difficult days and stressful days and situations that aren't fun to walk through. But you know, as a youth leader, especially, like what I tell my youth leaders is some of the things that we get to walk through with students, while they're not fun and while we don't want to, like the mental health stuff, especially, like whenever I get those calls or conversations, it's like, man, here we go again. But you also at the same time, like, you want to have those because you know statistically, like, our students are dealing with that stuff. What better place for them to go to with it than their youth leader or their youth pastor? Or and so if they're coming to us with that, then we're doing something right, because it feels like it's a safe place where they can share what they're going through and we can be a resource. And so while those things are hard, they're also like, man, to see yourself like having a difference and making a difference is really cool. And then I would also say, like, just the relationships you get to build with people in the church, like people who are just like volunteers and hungry for serving. And we have such amazing servant leaders in our church. And so getting to work with people like that every day has been really fun.
So what would be a win for you? I mean, when you think in terms of a year from now, what would be, say, 1, 2, maybe even 3 things that you would want to see in the youth that would be a win? You'd say, wow, we're making progress. We're getting the kingdom of God ball down the road a little bit.
Yeah. I don't think I would have had any idea how to answer that question like right when I started, you know. But now that I'm going into year 3, I think some of the things that are cool and feel like wins is because I've seen kids graduate now out of the high school youth group, and we just had a big class in May that left, and a lot of those kids don't want to leave. like they want to come back and serve, whether they're serving with the worship team or they want to serve as a youth leader. They don't even know what. They're just like, I want to do something because I don't want to leave. To me, that feels like, wow, we must have been doing something right. That this feels like a place where they want to be and they want to be involved. And a lot of them now, it's like they don't want to just be involved because they're getting filled up, but now they want to come and make sure that other kids have the same experience they did, and they want to be a part of that and help serve and pour into other people. And so that is really cool. And to me, that feels like a win and feels like fruit. We're seeing that, like, man, they get it. Like they obviously got something out of it, and now they want to go. It doesn't have to be that they're pouring into the youth group, but man, if we have students who are leaving and are fired up about serving and making a difference wherever they feel called, then that's great. And that feels like, man, we must have been doing something right.
So what would you say then? Would you say that it's their desire to continue to grow and be a disciple of Christ? That's a big win, is where you see them even getting to their senior year, graduating, and wanting to continue to serve?
That's a word. Growth is a word I use a lot, not in the typical way of like, we want to grow our youth group and have crazy numbers or something like that. But I use the word growth in the sense of like, I want to see students grow, right? I want to see them develop in their walk with Christ and how they're serving, in their relationships with their peers. Like, I just want to see them grow and mature, as Hebrews talks about, like going from milk to solid food. Like, I want to see that process while they're in our youth group. Like, are they up, upgrading their faith? Are they moving up in their walk with the Lord and growing from milk to solid food? Like, I want to see that growth.
So tell me some of the things that you do
to make
that makes that happen.
Yeah. So on a typical, every Wednesday we do some sort of small groups. And I think that's the most effective way to see real discipleship and growth, but also to make a big group of people feel smaller. And I think for a lot of our students and leaders, like, they love that small group time, because in a big setting, it's hard to have those deep conversations, or it's hard to build relationships or be vulnerable. But when we section that off and make the groups smaller, it allows for that to happen. And so, but in those times, when we build those questions, and a lot of times they are built around challenging the students and about growth. And so I usually, once a month, we'll do a small group focus night where we do a small message that's usually topical and practical. And then they're spending like 45 minutes to an hour in their small groups. And so, like, next month, I'm going to do one on PB&J, right? Prayer Bible Journal, like practically showing students, like, how do we spend time with the Lord, and like, this is how I do it. This is how other people do it. And then go to your small groups and share how you guys do it. Or if you're not doing it, what can you start doing? And so really just practical stuff like that we can talk about in smaller groups and hopefully implement and then follow up, because we keep the small groups consistent for a whole school year so that relationship is built, and then leaders are able to follow up and check in and build off of the weeks prior.
So Joey, how do you balance all the responsibilities that go with being a youth pastor, and you've got a growing department? I mean, it's growing. There's other things that we ask you to do around here, and be now a father of 3 and a husband to 1.
Yeah.
So what do you do? How do you walk that? How do you walk that line, as Johnny Cash said? How do you walk the line there?
Yeah. Well, it's a good question. And, I've been in a couple, as we've talked about, a couple different careers now. And I would say this is my favorite one to walk that line with so far, because there are things that my family can do with me. When I was commuting to Denver and working on a airfield with jets, like, I couldn't bring my 5-year-old to work, but like, there are things that I can do here. Like, Allie is super involved in the youth group, and she comes every night, and God bless my mother, she watches our kids every Wednesday night so Allie can come to youth group. But there are times when she can't watch them, and we'll bring the kids. And I don't want to do that every week because it's harder for us to focus, but it's actually really cool because the youth kids love it, and they love seeing our kids. And I think it's cool for us to kind of model family, a family serving in ministry together. And our kids love it. They love all the youth kids and playing spike ball and stuff. But I think, so to answer that question, like, a lot of, whenever I'm able to, is merge the two, like, involve my family in my ministry, involvement, as much as I can, without doing a disservice to either side, try to do them simultaneously. But it is hard. And that's why I appreciate you in the atmosphere here of, like, preaching that our family is our primary ministry. And, I've heard things from people in our church and, who grew up as pastors' kids and did not have that relationship with their parent who's a pastor. Those stories are heartbreaking, and so I think to make sure that I say that all the time, but am I doing that? Like pouring into my family first and before anything else. And so, some weeks are harder than others for sure to walk that line with and there are situations that come up that I have to deal with. And then, so it's just me being intentional to, on the aftermath of that, after the situation's been handled, spending extra time with the family and pouring into them and that kind of thing.
Do you feel like you have an opportunity to have a greater impact through being a youth pastor in a church than you did as a school teacher?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. And I think one thing you said earlier about feel like, made for this or something like that, that when you said that, it struck me like sometimes God sees things in ourselves that we don't see, right? Like, I think Lord knew that I could do this job and I didn't know that, and so,
right.
As a teacher, like I said, I loved being a teacher and a coach but I don't think I was reaching my full potential of how I could have impacted those students and who's to say I am now, but I think, yes, I would say I feel like I have a greater impact on the daily basis here than I do as a teacher. And that's not to say a public school teacher couldn't. I just think at that time in my life, I wasn't in a place or I didn't really know how. And then through this experience, I think I've kind of learned how it is that we make a big impact with students and how I can do that better than I did back then.
Well, how have you grown? How would you say you got yourself equipped in the midst of coming in, no experience, never been to graduate school, right?
I do have a master's, but it's in education.
Okay, you have been to graduate school, but you haven't been to Bible school.
Right.
So, again, not even something that you were planning to do. And suddenly you're thrust into it, you become a part of it, you're doing it very well. What have you done to kind of equip yourself through this first few years? Yeah,
I think on the Bible teaching side of it, just preparing like I did. I think, I don't know. I didn't even realize how much I think there were similarities between preparing a lesson for school and preparing a message at youth group. And I think the same thing I did then as I do now is just over preparing, making sure that I think anticipating questions is something that I've always done, and you have to do when you're teaching 35 eighth graders. You can't anticipate all the questions because they're weird, but you get a lot of questions. And so it's like, man, when I'm putting something together, I'm like, well, somebody could ask this. What's my answer to that? To try to be prepared so that I know the topic so well or know the passage so well that I can answer questions. And so I'll try, some weeks are crazier than others, and I'm writing a message Wednesday right before youth group, but most of the time I've at least started meditating on that passage. And that's something I think I learned from you and Pastor Ryan of like, you're going to read a passage 20 times before you actually start typing out a message, And so I'll do that, start meditating on it, listening to it, reading it, praying through it. And that's where the Lord just starts giving you ideas and directions to go with the message and things to bring up. And so, I always do that. Commentaries, I lean a lot on commentaries and look at least a few other voices of what people are saying. Commentators that I trust and respect and that you've recommended and rely on that as well as I'm preparing. And then on the practical side too, I think that was probably a bigger learning curve for me was like leading a team of servant leaders, of volunteers, because I'd never done that before. I'd had leadership opportunities, mostly in the military. I led a team my last couple of years in the military, but they swore an oath to our country and they have to be there and they're getting paid. And so there's a contrast from that to leading a team of volunteers in a youth setting. And so that was something I really focused on my first year was like, how do I get them trained and equipped and prepared, but then also not burnt out? How do I make sure that they're valued and appreciated? And that's where teaming up with Allie has been huge because I think she has a gift of hospitality. And so she's always thinking through like, do our leaders feel valued and appreciated and do they want to be here? And so, I feel like I've spent a lot of time on that aspect of the job and had to learn fast on how to do that. And still learning fast and navigating that. But that's been really important, I think, because Allie and I can't effectively lead a youth group by ourselves. So we have to be pouring into our team so that we can do it with them, serving them.
So you're working a lot through a leadership team. You've got a leadership team, and you guys meet, and I know about that, and you're training them on a regular basis. I think it really does help, doesn't it, when you have these young people that have come up, they've got the chemistry and the DNA of the Road Church youth group.
Yeah.
And then they don't want to leave.
Right.
They want to stay.
Yeah.
So are they leading small groups?
The really young one, like the ones who just graduated?
The leaders that are on your leadership team, are they then leading small groups?
Yeah, exactly. So, and we do have a cool mix of, like, we have people on our team that have been in the youth group, right? And they're younger, whether it was a couple years ago or they've come up through the church. And so, that's great because they get it. You know, they've seen leaders do it for them and they're ready to do the same thing. And then we also have people, what's great about our team is we do have a variety of age ranges. We have some older people, some moms that are on our team, and then we've got younger people as well. And so I have the high school and middle school youth groups broken up by gender and age level into small groups, and like 9th grade boys, 10th grade girls, that kind of thing. And then have a couple leaders assigned to each group. And so that way a kid knows right away, and we usually do small groups at the beginning of the night, so they know quickly, because it can be intimidating to walk into a room full of people you don't know. And so quickly they know, well, this is a leader that's assigned to me, and these are kids that are my age. And so that helps a student feel more welcomed and plugged in and connected to some people, hopefully early on in the night. But we give our leaders jobs, and I think that I've seen that to be successful, because then a lot of them will take ownership of their own small group. And so we have leaders that will do creative and fun things with outside of youth group with their girls and with the leaders they're partnered with, and so that's cool when they kind of just take it and run with it, and it gives them a part of the night that they can kind of feel like they have ownership over. To
what extent do you think kids can enter into praise and worship at such a young age?
Yeah, that's a great question. We have our high school ministries and our middle school ministries separate. And so we do middle school on Sunday mornings and high school on Wednesday nights. And so you can see, we do worship with both, and you can see a difference. And I think it's really just a training process and kind of pushing them to be uncomfortable. And middle school is an age where it's like, man, they really care about their friends and their peers, and so how do I try to get a student to stop looking at their friend during worship and kind of focus in, and that's definitely a challenge and something we get to work through, but it's cool to see the growth from that. Those same kids that were messing around a couple years ago are now actively engaging in worship, when they get to high school. And so it is, it's kind of a process of just pushing them and challenging them. So that's one thing we do is encouraging everyone to raise your hands, encouraging everyone to close your eyes, encouraging everyone to take a moment and pray. And so I think those things are helpful to get them to that point. But I think it can happen at a very young age for a student to actively engage with the Lord in a time of worship. And so, we're always pushing for it at middle school and high school for sure.
Well, it seems to be working. It really does seem to be working. It's amazing to see, especially on Sunday morning, all these young people up there right next to the stage going for it.
Yep.
And they can't be more than 17, 18 years old at the most.
Yeah.
But they're passionate. So they're getting that, I think, on Wednesday, and they're carrying it over into Sunday. And it's very balanced. It's very mature. It appears to me. It's not like crazy or anything.
And that's always really encouraging to see that. Another area I've seen spill over to Sunday mornings is like students praying for each other. And that's something we push a lot on Wednesday nights. And it starts in the small group time. And I always tell my leaders, especially if you have freshmen or you have a younger group, I always want the small group time to end in prayer. And it's probably going to start with you praying for your students. But try to develop it and push it to a point where they're praying for each other. And that's happened. And so we see that not just during small group time at Tribe anymore at youth group, but we see it during worship time, they're praying over each other. I even have a middle school student who will walk around the room during worship and pray for everybody. You know, how can I pray? Yeah, how can I pray?
A middle school student?
Yeah, and he'll pray for the leaders, anybody who's in the room. He'll walk around and pray for them.
That's so great.
That's always really encouraging to see that. And then when you see it on, you know, Sunday morning and in big service, like see kids doing that too is really cool. Like worshiping up front, praying for each other, and yeah, it's nice to see that fruit.
Do you do ministry? One-on-one prayer or two-on-one, whatever it might be, on Wednesday night? I mean, you guys do that where you call people forward and then you have trained people that pray for them?
Yeah, exactly. So my leaders, I'm always encouraging them to pray with students during ministry time, or during worship time, which a lot of times is ministry time. And so, sometimes we'll have a specific call or a specific word that I'll get or and that, you know, bringing people forward. But a lot of times I don't even have to do that. A lot of times my leaders are already and what I tell them is, hey, you know, when you come to youth group as a leader, I want you to engage in worship. But I think how a leader is engaged in worship is different than a student, because you're here to serve and pour out. And so when you're worshiping, ask the Holy Spirit, what do you want me to do during this time? Like, who do you want me to pray for? And so I think that's how we're engaged in worship, is I'm talking to the Holy Spirit and asking the Holy Spirit to highlight people in my mind that I need to be focused on and praying for. And so I encourage my leaders to do the same thing, and they do such an awesome job with that, and they're bouncing around the room praying for kids. And so, we'll do that. Happens every night. And then, most of the time we do a specific altar call, if you want to call it that too.
So you're really doing everything that we do on Sunday morning.
Yeah, that's true.
Except in a youth culture context.
Right.
Probably there's going to be lots of people watching this who either know about you or they just happen to punt it. They see a young guy who's a pastor. What would you say will be your advice to someone in their 20s who thinks they're called into full-time vocational ministry, and they're not sure? They're not sure if they want to do that. It seems daunting. Never been to Bible college, never been to seminary. What would be your advice to them?
Start serving. I think I look back at the experience I had as a volunteer and how much that shapes what I'm doing now. And volunteer here at the Road, but even when Allie and I first got married, we served with a youth ministry our first year of marriage. And that was like 8 years ago. But I think back to that all the time. And a lot of things that happened to us and we navigated in that year shaped how I run the youth ministry here and how I treat my leaders and train them. And so any experience you can have serving and being involved in ministry will help down the road. Like, it'll shape how you do things, and it'll answer that question. Like, I think I want to do this, but I'm not sure. Well, that's how you can kind of find out and watch the leaders, watch the youth pastor, watch whatever area of ministry you're at, and think through what it'd be like to do what they're doing. And that's what I tell young people who have come out of our youth group and they want to transition to the leadership team. I give them a period of time and I say, continue to come. And now you need to start to retrain your brain and think, how would I behave now as a leader as opposed to a student? And so you can do that in your mind, like just noticing things and man, what would it mean for me to be here and serve? What would it mean for me to be here and running things, And then you'll be shocked too at the opportunities you can have as a volunteer. Like, you might get an opportunity to teach. You might get an opportunity. So you can start to do those things in that setting, and it'll not only grow you, but it'll also answer those questions of, is this something I'm supposed to do or called to do?
For you that don't know the Road, kind of our culture here, but the way Joey just described how one might see if God's calling them into ministry full time is exactly what we do here. I'd say most people that we have on the team have been grown from within. Yeah. So we already know the people before we hire them. We knew Joey because he was serving as a servant leader for the past youth pastor, Ryan Steyer. And I look at worships this way, the children's ministries this way. We've just kind of gradually raised up people through knowing them because they're serving. And I just totally concur with that the best way to learn, if you have a desire to be a pastor, is not going to be academics. Now, academics can be important. I have a few degrees, but you don't have to have that. Some of the best pastors have no degrees, no formal theological training, but what they do have is they have leadership, and they learned leadership by being in the trenches, being in the hunt in a local church. Thank you, Joey.
This is great.
Totally
Thank you.
Agree with everything you've said, and it's an honor to be on the same team with you. So thanks
Absolutely.
for being here, man.
Thanks, Pastor Steve. That's
So
great.
yeah, if any of you have questions, let us know. That's what this podcast is about, is to help us understand how to get empowered to change the world, how to make a difference. So thanks for tuning in. And if you know someone who's not sure about their future, but they're thinking about the ministry, this would be a great podcast for them to watch. Send it over to them. So thanks a lot for listening.